Growing up as a competitive synchronized swimmer, my coach used to always say, "It is not enough to know, you must apply." I don't think that's her original quote. She probably got it from someone, but she did say it on a very consistent basis because she would be frustrated that she was giving information over and over and over in the same corrections, as we called them, and we would keep doing the same mistakes. But that's part of competitive athletics and part of growing. You don't always get things right away. But there is a lot of wisdom in that quote, and I want to sort of unpack that today in the context of this question that I've been asking myself kind of really strongly for the past year now. Maybe it's been longer than that. I don't know exactly when I started, but this question in my life started showing up of, do you know who you are without influence? Now, unless you live in a cave on the side of a mountain and haven't ever seen another human being in your life, I don't think anyone out there exists like that, maybe in some crazy shamanic tribe in the jungle where that's their rite of passage, whatever. But in modern society, there is really no way to be completely separate from influence on one another. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that we're influencing one another. That's what culture is. That's what part of being a human being is. But in the day of age of social media, where we have this exorbitant and ubiquitous access to millions, even billions of other human beings on the planet that we never used to have access to, I think it's made this sort of gap in evolution of we weren't really designed to have access to so many different people from so many different places. And while again, there can be really beautiful things that come out of that, there can also be, like everything, a shadow side that comes out of that. And that is just this sort of hyper fixation on what everyone else is doing in the world, and this disconnect that can happen from your own inner voice, and particularly in the context of the guru. Gurus are not a modern thing. There have been spiritual or philosophical quote unquote gurus for thousands of years now, but again, in this day and age of social media where the guru back in the day maybe had access to a couple hundred or 1,000 local people that would sort of hear their message and maybe become enthralled by it or inspired by it or mystified by it or whatever. There are now gurus that can reach essentially the whole planet or anyone that has access to internet. And so this is a way bigger sphere of influence, and you as a digital consumer have a way bigger access to these gurus in the world. And there's not just a small handful of them. There's a guru for everything. There's a guru for your diet. There's a guru for your mental health. There's a guru for how you should speak to people. There's a guru for relationships. There's a guru for what type of exercise you should be doing. There's a guru for how to study. There's a guru for how to learn languages. There's a guru for how you should dress. There's a guru for how you should make your home. There's a blah, 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 like literally every single function you could do as a human being. There's a guru for that. And while of course there is help out there, there is inspiration out there, there are many, it is good to learn. The shadow side I'm talking about today is I think even learning can be a distraction. Now, I'm not saying don't ever read a book again in your life, don't ever listen to a talk again in your life, but in this day and age of just 24/7 access to millions of gurus out there, I think it can really distort your own inner wisdom and your own inner voice and who you authentically should be as a human being, who you're meant to be as a human being in this lifetime, because everyone's journey is uniquely their own. It's good to hear these voices from gurus from the outside world, but when someone elevates themselves, whether by their own proclamations or because all these other people start following them on social media or buying their books or going to their workshops or whatever the hell, when they get elevated to that status, it can be a dangerous place because you're starting to worship this person as they have all the answers. And as soon as you sort of outsource that knowledge of wisdom to this person, and say they have all the answers, you're really diminishing your own personal power and saying, I have none of the answers. And all of a sudden, you don't know how to eat, you don't know how to dress, you don't know how to decorate your home, you don't know how to study, you don't know how to learn, you don't know how to interact with people. these modern gurus, while yes, there are probably nuggets of really helpful things that they say, when they get elevated to this guru status and you see them and worship them as guru, you really diminish your own inner knowing. And I think there is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is stuff you can go learn from a book or from a talk or from some text or from the internet or whatever. But wisdom is something that is more finite and esoteric and ethereal, and something I think that we do all have innate access to. And when you are so caught up in the knowledge of the external, whether it is some guru's book or some guru's talk or whatever, I think you're kind of closing the door to the access of inner wisdom that you have. And the more these gurus kind of gain status and want to collect money or pay fame or popularity or views or likes or whatever, it's saying that you don't have any of the answers for yourself, and it's sort of rendering you helpless, because if you do have those answers for yourself, then their job sort of becomes obsolete to a certain extent, and the gurus don't want that. And I'm not saying all gurus or whatever are malicious or malintending, because I think a lot of people in these positions, whether they gave themselves the label of guru or not, are really trying to help people, and that's a beautiful thing. But like everything in life, I think there's a balance, and it takes a certain level of self-awareness and checking in with when you start getting fixated on someone's channel or their talk or their books or workshop type things or their package things, like do the little course, this online course, and then you'll be able to have everything figured out. I think those things can be helpful, but it should be I recommend at least a constant checking in process of, are you getting so swept away in this person's message that you now have rendered yourself helpless? You now don't know how to feed yourself. You're not listening to your body, you're not listening to your own heart or your own intuition, because you think everyone else, whether it's in the medical profession or in the psychology profession or in the education sector or in the diet sector, the list goes on forever. The more you get stuck on all these people have the answers for me, you stop asking questions and stop thinking that you could have possibly the answers for yourself. Now, of course, if you are really, really stuck or hitting a wall in something, having access to these teachers can really help in a great way. And I've absolutely learned from so many teachers, and I've shared that on this channel before, that have really helped me through certain things. And so I'm not saying don't ever listen to someone's talk or inspiration again, but you get to a point, I would say the analogy I'd use is, once you pass algebra in high school, algebra 1, let's say, do you take it again the next year and again the next year and again the year after that? No, and especially for people that don't like math so much, you're probably really happy to get your algebra passed and then move on. Or same thing with like a world history course or a beginning sewing course. Once you have the basics of something, do you keep taking it over and over and over again? Usually not. Usually you move to the next thing. And I think that's the trap that, especially on social media, when people are trying to get views and likes and follows, and it is their monetary income, they can sort of be pushing out repetitive content. And it is useful for, say, people that are new coming to it, and it's their first exposure to that content, and it's very helpful for them. Again, I'm not saying gurus are bad people, but you checking in with yourself and having personal responsibility for yourself, looking in to say, okay, is this really gratifying in this moment? Is this really helpful in this moment? Or am I just sort of now being addicted to this self-help content? Because that can be a thing. As I mentioned earlier, even learning can be a distraction. In your first exposure to knowledge that is really congruent with what you need to work on in life, that's a great thing. But if you're just sort of repeating that knowledge over and over and over and over, you are then it becomes an addictive sort of behavior and a distraction from doing the actual work, which is what I said with, my coach saying earlier in her voice, it's not enough to know, you must apply. Well, we would get so annoyed in that moment because I'm like, I'm trying to apply, but there is the wisdom in that of you to just keep being I've talked about the hungry hippo analogy with consumerism on this channel of just buying clothing, buying handbags to fill a void, buying home decor to fill a void. You can do that with knowledge too, just feverishly reading books to get the answers, feverishly scrolling through some influencers, some guru influencers, TikTok or Instagram. Maybe this quote will make me figure out my life. Maybe that talk is going to be the one that finally makes me figure out my life. But if you find you're kind of on a wheel with that, and that's only you know that, I'm not going to tell you if you are or not. It's you, again, you have to come back to self-awareness and personal responsibility. Now, don't go watching guru talks on should you stop watching gurus. I mean, I get the irony of I'm speaking about this here, but I'm really just sharing my own personal journey with it. But that even applies to my channel. If you're at a place of minimalism where, okay, you've got the basics, you've sort of see how simplicity can look, you've got some techniques for decluttering, see if you're just watching minimalism videos, including my own, and it's becoming actual entertainment, or it's becoming just this binge addictive behavior of, oh, if I just watch this next video, then it'll all be figured out. At a certain point, you need to stop watching the damn videos, even if they're mine, please, or the talks or doing the workshops or whatever, and just really apply it to your life. And the thing is, no one can apply it to your life, whether it's dietary wisdom, psychological wisdom, or knowledge, I should say, or minimalism knowledge or whatever. No one can apply it to your life but you. You have to start putting it into practice. And that means it's like taking the training wheels off of your bike. These sort of the first stages of consuming this content or listening to these gurus, yes, they're giving you some great tools to have on your tool belt to start elevating your life in whatever category you want to. At a certain point, you have to take the training wheels off. At a certain point, you need to turn off the YouTube channel or stop scrolling on the self-help Instagram, algorithm world, or close the book and say, I've consumed enough knowledge. Now, where does the wisdom come in? The wisdom comes from you. You've gotten the access, you've gotten what you need to on the outside. The wisdom comes from, okay, how does this apply uniquely in my life? And what actions do I need to take? And what wisdom is actually coming from within me that's deeper than something I learned in a book or deeper from someone else said? Because as I said earlier, your life is your own and you have your own journey to walk, and you're not as helpless as you think. I think just like other animals in nature, we were endowed, whatever your spiritual beliefs are, as an animal on the planet, there is innate wisdom in us as human beings that is there to guide us on our course in life. If you think of, I was just watching this really side note, but everyone knows, or if you've watched my channel, you know I'm obsessed with Scandinavia, the nature there and Viking culture. But I was watching this really cool documentary on the plane yesterday called Wild Scandinavia. I highly recommend it. It's beautiful. But it was just showing all these crazy migration patterns and just the immense difficulty that these Nordic animals have to go to, that, flying 100 miles a day out to sea to get food, or just all these crazy survival tactics that they had. And they didn't have to have a guru for that. These animals, like a whale, can migrate from Alaska to Hawaii without GPS, but also without having to have read a book about it or listened to some talk about it. How sea turtles can go back to a beach where they were hatched. They knew where they were born with, they didn't have to go take a college class to be able to do that. That's what I'm talking about with innate wisdom. And we forget, I'm reading a really cool book right now called Sapiens by Yuval Harari. I also really recommend it. It's a super cool, just in-depth look at the history of how humans have evolved. And we forget we are also an animal. We are a mammal. Sapiens are part of the animal kingdom on this planet. And we've gone in a crazy direction with how we've developed our intellect, which is knowledge, which is external things, building aircrafts or spaceships or, X-ray machines or cars, planes, all the things. But going so much in that direction of intellect has, I think, severed us from the innate wisdom that we did come with, that other animals on this planet have come with for our survival. And it's not just the the reptilian brain stem of eat, sleep, mate, survive, fight or flight. There is deeper knowledge. There's there's uncontacted tribes in the Amazon that can find plants in the middle of hundreds of square miles and know that this plant is medicinal. This one will help with a fever. This one will help heal a cut. This one will help heal stomach ailments. That's incredible wisdom that we used to have. As hunter-gatherers, we used to know which plant was poisonous, which plant could be used for tea, following the patterns of a herd of whatever animal. This is all innate things that we were gifted with by whatever your theories of evolution or creation or spirituality are. Those things were in us. And while it's incredible the amount of evolution we've had as intellect, I do think there is an imbalance of inner wisdom has been pushed to the side. And if we get so engrossed in this guru worship, you are just severing the cord from your own wisdom that I do think is inherently in you. And as you continue on your path of evolution and cultivating a life that you really want to be living, I think it's really quite imperative that you do come back into contact with that wisdom. And that's why I talk so much about silence on this channel, and I've pulled back really. I don't watch really any other YouTube content anymore, and I'm extremely selective with the books I do read, because I did in the past get very engrossed in these sort of spiritual self-help books, and while I don't regret that, it was really integral to my path of evolution at that time. You get to that point of now applying. It's not just about consuming knowledge constantly and sort of distracting yourself from the inner work that needs to be done, of eventually just taking off the spiritual training wheels and saying, okay, I've learned enough. They talk about this in Zen Buddhism. When the cup is full, it's going to start overflowing, right? It's a very simple analogy, but just picturing emptying the teacup or whatever and saying, emptying your vessel, not so you can just accrue a bunch more knowledge, but have more sort of silence and stillness and presence with the self, and finding the fullness that comes from within, not from without, and then seeing the transformation that happens in your life. You've graduated out of this accumulation stage, and now you're in the application stage. And I think that's just something to be mindful of, and something I've found now. Not saying I'm all perfectly evolved, like, no, I'm not. And no, I'm not a guru either. I'm just here sharing my experiences. But as I've sort of am coming into this newer, more recent stage in my life of the past year of having extreme silence, of not getting so caught up in what everyone else has to say, and sort of relaxing on dogma, if you will, especially with sort of dietary things, or like, you need to eat this way as a vegan. Like, no, I'm vegan for ethics, and that's it, period. I eat real food as much as I can, but releasing sort of that attachment to this is how you have to do it. And with spiritual growth stuff or mental health stuff, saying, okay, I don't need to read another book on how to be okay. I have the tools within me on how to be okay. And it can be scary at first, and you can feel sort of alone in that journey or unsupported sometimes, but you really are your greatest healer across the board, whether it is mental health stuff or physical body stuff or trauma stuff or finding your way in the world. Really, I think at the end of the day, only you have the answers for you. And as a side note, I don't mean that you can, if you are really trying to learn a new skill, like say playing the piano. Why did I just say it like that? Piano? I don't think you can just sit and meditate your way and all of a sudden know how to play Beethoven's Fifth on the piano. There are teachers out there for specific skills like that, or learning a new language. If I were to just sit in silence for 6 months, would I all of a sudden know how to speak German? Probably not. So that type of specific technical learning, like, yes, if you want to acquire those things, which is still great and awesome, by the way, you do need access to those teachers. I'm talking more about the esoteric things of finding your way in the world and living the life you want to live. I think there's a point where you can transcend these gurus and come into yourself and say, I know what I need to do for my life. I have autonomy over my life. I am not as helpless as the media and all these experts who want my money want to make me feel that I am. I actually have more power and wisdom and truth within myself than what the outside world has deemed me to think. And that can be a really empowering thing to come to. So that is the speech for today, and I hope that, let me know if that resonates for you at all. And if it means you pull back from my channel because you found you've just been watching too many of my declutter videos and it's time to start applying for yourself, then great, I totally support that. I'm not here to be your guru, I'm just here sharing my life. And at the end of the day, you're just so much more powerful than you think, and you have so much more within you than you realize to cultivate your life for you in your own way. Okay, that's the talk for today, my friends. I will see you in the next video. Bye.